Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Great Malabite.
Good morning, Ruben.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Good morning,
back.
Good morning, Ayo.
Stephen, great to see you.
Yes.
I was worried.
Well, Ruben, a lot of people over there, they're saying they have a fan club, the Morning Show fan club. And they've been asking of Ruben and everybody, Rufai, truckload of salutation, support, and solidarity for you.
I was worried. How was it
cool.
Bless you, sir.
You know what I went there for?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, we'll start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of record. The lead story, Naira Redesign, why Nigeria's two critical institutions must make peace. Court stops Emefiele's arrest, declare Buhari's authority required to arrest CBN governor. Frowns at use of court to cover for irregular procedure, which is unacceptable, in the words of the court. DSS talks tough. Top politicians, lawmakers, governors fingered in plot. Yes, the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Director of State Security, two institutions that should be working towards the common good of the country. But the DSS was in court, trying to get court permits, as it were, to arrest the central bank governor. But according to this day report, elder statesmen are already wading into the issue, because since the central bank announced the redesign of the Naira, the DSS have said to be overbearing, wanting to know every move concerning the minting, the printing of the redesigned Naira. But it has gotten to a situation where this DSS approached the court trying to arrest the central bank governor over issues of funding of terrorism. The president, who is the boss of Emefiele, and also the boss, the commander-in-chief of the Nigerian forces, the boss of the DSS, perhaps will have to wade into this matter because, as the court rightly declared, you cannot arrest the central bank governor without the authority of the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, the Guardian newspaper, electricity, APC failed on 40,000 megawatts promise, rations 4,000 megawatts. Stakeholders insist Buhari failed in sector despite 1.6 billion intervention, $3 billion loans. Nigerians paying for darkness, says Okay Amadi. Sector worst in last 7 years. Yes, the state of the Nigerian electricity is said to be worse off than it was in 2015 as we speak. And of course, industries are feeling the pinch because they have to, of course, generate their own electricity. With the diesel price sky high, we know the impact on industries. Now, if we look at other newspapers quickly, now the Business Day newspaper, the lead story, mixed expectations for Santa rally as stocks rebound. But my story of interest just beside the lead story, Atiku plans to end petrol subsidy in first 100 days. Yes, somebody is speaking to this issue of fuel subsidy, which we all agree, especially here on Arise, that should go. Because the trillions squandered in the name of fuel subsidy can do so much for this country in education, in health. I traveled over the weekend, Ruben and Rufai, and from Ogun State to Delta State, there were no queues. The independent marketers were selling fuel between
You went by
245.
road?
Yes, I did.
You couldn't.
No, I don't have to fly. I don't have to fly. We enjoy traveling by road, Ruben. We still travel by road in this country. If you've been scared out of traveling by road, that is not my problem. I still travel by road. I do, even though I can fly into Subi Airport just beside my village, Ruben. Now, I travel by road. Now, petrol is being sold between 245 and 260 from Ogun State to Ondo State to Edo State to Delta State, from Warri to Ugele. I did not get to Isoko land, Ayo. But what am I saying? People were buying, no problem, nobody protesting. You just buy and go. So it tells you that indeed, if we do the appropriate pricing and remove this subsidy, we won't be having some of this problem. Where do you get petrol for 170 Naira per liter? Ikoyi. Where the likes of Ruben can fill their jeep. Other big men, they fill their jeep. But in the rural areas where the poor people live, we are buying for 260 Naira per liter. So I'm on with Atiku, who has said in the first 100 days, if he's elected Nigerian president, he will end subsidy. I want to hear from other presidential candidates on what they will do concerning fuel subsidy and how soon they will do it. Unlike the current president, who has been kicking the can down the road, and he has kicked the can to the next administration, not a way to lead the people. Because you have to be bold and take bold decisions, especially when it is in greater interest of the country and the people. Now, the Nation newspaper, workers to get better deal. Tinubu assures NLC, TUC. Yes, ex-Lagos governor presents plans to union leaders. Labour gives APC candidate charter of demand. Yes, good to see Tinubu in his well-choreographed town hall with Labour. Yes, because the last time I heard him mention Labour was the Labour Party when he went to campaign in Osun State, telling Labour they will labor till they die. Now at least he knows that there's dignity in Labour, and he's talking to Labour, making promises, and they have given him charter of demands. The how he will deal with this, of course, left to be seen, but it's good that the presidential candidate of the APC is talking to Labour. Now, the Punch newspaper, rising attacks, vote buying, threatened polls, INEC cries out. Now, this has been on for quite some time, the attack on INEC. For how long can this continue before it will affect the preparation for the 2023 general elections? The security agencies must rise up to the occasion, but INEC crying out, and I can understand why they are doing so. Now, the Daily Sun newspaper, anger, anxiety over new Naira note, frustrated by scarcity of redesigned currency, Nigerians cry out. Governors meet Buhari this week to seek review of withdrawal. Hawkers have field day selling new currency in parties. Yes, that's another surprise. How these hawkers get the new currency, whereas some of us are yet to even feel or see the new currency physically. Now, also, the front page of Daily Sun 2023, APC leaders, ministers beg Nigerians. Of course, a lot of failure based on the promises made by the APC in 2014 ahead of the general election in 2015. A lot of those promises not met. Yet the APC, of course, is seeking power again. But Nigerians are taking note, but APC leaders are begging. Now, the Daily Trust newspaper, the lead story, another failure. Scores of bandits, 13 soldiers killed in Zamfara, Bauchi clashes, dozens of Zamfara villagers killed in airstrike, crossfire, 3 military vehicles burnt. NAF, Nigerian Air Force confirms dual mom on collateral damage. gunmen kill 28, burnt houses in southern Kaduna attack. Yes, insecurity still widespread. Bandits, terrorists still having a field day. So it is not enough for the president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, to say, oh, when we came into power in 2015, X number of local governments in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe were inhabited or occupied by terrorists. What is happening now across the country in many parts of the northern states? Still huge insecurity. Of course, also on the front page of the Daily Trust, Ambassador Shehu Malameyes, Prince of the Sokoto Caliphate, passed away, and Buhari mourns his passage. Now, the foreign newspapers quickly, the Guardian newspaper, union leader, implore ministers to talk amid fears of patient harm. Now, hospitals say illnesses and injury victims will need to get themselves to the accident and emergency ward, as thousands of ambulance workers in England and Wales will be embarking on strike. Well, the Wall Street Journal is reporting January 8 panel refers Trump for charges. Investigation finds former president engaged in conspiracy, incited insurrection. Yes, that recommendation to the Department of Justice to charge Donald Trump, former president of the U.S., to court, of course, for disseminating false information of fraud related to the 2020 election, as well as provoking his supporters to violence and stirring up violent attempt to block the transfer of power. Will the Department of Justice do the needful? Ruben Rufai and Ayo.
The DOJ should take up Trump on that. And this is just coming on the heels of his ambition. Anyway, he's doing very poorly in the polls. Ron DeSantis is actually doing what the Americans will call a shellacking on Trump. He's beating in the polls, I think, by over double digits and the like. So his political career is far from over. So the Democrats that think his political career is toast, I'm not sure they know what they're talking about. But he must be able to account, for the insurrection he oversaw on democracy. How can a president, because he lost an election, try to destroy democracy in his country? That was a show of shame. That was akin to what, in fact, for the first time, I would say African leaders even have more dignity than Donald Trump. True. Because an African leader will not be that stupid to do such a dastardly act against his own nation. That was the height of madness. And that was a new low for America. And America should deal with that, But also, we saw the best part of democracy. We saw how his own vice president kicked against him that day, because his vice president could have been killed that day. We saw how people and the entire nation rallied around and said, not in our country. And I think we should all stand up for democracy in our country. For the very first time, I say African leader has the better decency than an American president that calls themselves the bastion of democracy. So I'm happy that the DOJ is on this, and I'm happy that they're going to go fast at this, how quickly they can nail him, and such a thing should never happen in America again. And also, we must take learnings here. Elections are coming. If you dispute elections, please go to the courts. Do not incite your followers to violence and destruction. We remember, we have not forgotten in the past, where some people said blood will flow.
The blood of the baboon.
Blood of baboons and donkeys. We should never forget that we had such an incident in this country where some people uttered statements like that because they didn't win elections.
But we also remember that Goodluck Jonathan.
And we also remember how some people also did say that my candidacy and my emergence is not worth the blood of any Nigerian. So we've seen highs in this country and we've seen lows.
Well,
so please, let's make it
two foreign
good.
stories, Ifeanyi. The first has to do with the NHS meltdown, with the Royal College of Nurses going on strike for the first time in the history of that institution. And the nurses are not alone. Paramedics are also staging walkouts. Border officials are staging walkouts, and flights have been disrupted. This is bound to be a very really, really cold Christmas in England. But the more telling part of it is that with the nurses staging walkout, persons who have life-threatening issues, heart attack, stroke, they can't even have access to ambulances because the ambulance workers have, are on strike.
Yeah.
When you call people in the UK, you just call them that, look, even Pat Collins or one of the nurses, he said, we just hope that during this Christmas period, nobody will fall sick, nobody will need any emergency services. And yet, in spite of this, the government in England is saying, look, the demands are unreasonable, we're not going to talk. We're just offering you this percentage. Take it or leave it. Wage indexation is not the way to address the challenge of inflation. So it happens elsewhere too. And I just hope that this will not result in the deaths of people. That's one big news there. The second news that I think is also of interest is the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, apologizing yesterday for slavery, for Netherlands' involvement in slavery, particularly in the Dutch Guyana up till about 1836 or thereabouts. From the 16th century to the 19th century, the Netherlands had colonies used in Africa, and also took people from Africa to the Dutch Guyana to work in plantations. And now we have the Prime Minister, following an advisory and saying this was a crime against humanity. However, in parts of Dutch Guyana, particularly in Suriname, the people are saying no, they don't want this apology. There are commentators who are calling for reparation.
Yes.
Which is something, that is very familiar with us here.
Yes.
That there have been calls for reparation.
The late MP Abiola championed reparation.
The important thing to note, of course, is that, look, slavery of any form is a crime against humanity, as Mark Rutte has said. The Suriname people, they're saying that they expect the king in July next year, when it is the 60th anniversary, 160th anniversary of the abandonment of slavery by Netherlands, to make an apology. That is the apology they want. But others are asking for reparation. And it is unfortunate that even in the 21st century, we still get reports of cases of slavery in parts of the world.
Absolutely. On the foreign scene, winter of discontent, as we've talked about it a number of times with the strikes going on. Just trying to speak to a few people in the health, in the NHS, particularly nurses and doctors, and just the impact of this. Side by side, we had a number of people come out to say that don't forget the reason, the sanctity of the work that you do, and that the primary reason is to save lives and properties. But my apologies. But put that side by side, but also for the welfare of the nurses as well and medical practitioners. For how long will they continue to put above their own personal security of lives in terms of their earnings to the lives of people? It's quite unfortunate that the UK government hasn't come to an agreement with the nurses, paramedics and health workers. Quite unfortunate. And like Dr. Bati said, it's just looking at ensuring that we do not have a number of loss of lives or a report of loss of lives as a result of these strikes. Importantly, winter months are cold. We have more senior citizens going into hospitals, more emergency cases. So this could not be a worse timing when it has to do with strikes. Very unfortunate. And then back here, just going to the story on vote buying and the INEC story made some front pages. Again and again, and just yesterday we had a chat with the former commissioner in Akwa Ibom, where he was talking about the preparedness of INEC towards the 2023 election. This has come up in news, in conversation a number of times. With INEC, we're showing Nigerians that they are ready for the elections in 2023, despite the attacks on their facilities. Since 2019 to today, they've had 50 incidents across 15 states in the country. It is important to note that they have talked again and again about their own role and the role of security agencies. In fact, we spoke about this yesterday and talked about the fact that there has been no prosecution, at least to the knowledge of the public, made on the incessant attacks across INEC offices in Nigeria. It is unfortunate, and I believe that security agencies have a case to answer. Also, part of that report talks about the military coming out to say that they will take on, enforce democracy. And we talked about the militarization of elections in Nigeria, and the election is not war. We should come to a point in our nation's democracy whereby we are not deploying military officials. I mean, even though there's a provision in the constitution for that, to ensure peace and order, or law and order during elections. It is quite unfortunate. I believe the NSA and security agencies have a case to answer, and that we must hear it now. We don't want a postponement of elections. We don't want loss of lives or further properties leading up to the elections. But the INEC chairman has said that if this continues in January and February, they might not have no choice but to postpone elections, and that will be very unfortunate.
Well, thank you very much. I'm already finished.